Hello, hello. All right, welcome to video two for the 1940s and 50s background art extravaganza. So, here is the story. If you are just tuning in, you're working at an animation studio. They've just sold a new project, and this project is going to be set in the 1940s or 50s era, somewhere floating around there. And you are an environment artist at this studio, and you have got a character introduction. You're going to be setting up the beginning of a story. You can make your story for the 1940s and 50s, whatever it is you want it to be. It just needs to take place during this era. But the idea here is that we've got a six-shot sequence of the character or characters moving around a environment space. So this is going to be an interior. You can also have some exterior shots, as we'll see. But in this video, I want to go through and talk to you guys about a starting point and how this relates to storytelling, narrative, and just how to be able to get on the creative train when you're looking at a blank slate assignment that hits your desk. So in a lot of the creative world, it all starts with a core concept. In interior design, they say you just need one item. That one item, you can build an entire room around it. With fashion design or styling, and the clothes that you wear, a lot of times it just takes, find a jacket and then match the rest of the items to that jacket. It's really no different with this six-shot sequence that we're going to be doing. The idea is that you're going to go out on the internet. You're going to start looking at old school animation environments from Mickey Mouse to Tom and Jerry to anything that takes place or was created during this era. You're going to look at a whole bunch of different images and you're going to get some styles loaded into your brain. Maybe there's something that stands out to you, a color palette that's interesting. One animation background or illustration likely is not going to be enough to inform you for how to be able to get through this entire piece. But the more of these that you look at, the more it's going to start to tell the story of what it is that you want to create. And looking at these with an artist's eye and really disseminating how the artist is building these illustrations is going to help you immensely in this project. So that what we have on my screen right now is my starter image. And I was racking my brain. I was thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do for this project? How can I work my way through this? What would be interesting? And I kept on trying, this is my fourth time doing this. So I've already done sort of the mid-century modern home, coming from a pool scene into the interior. In the past, I've done a weekend cabin getaway for a family vacationing during this leisure period, and travel period in the United States where they're selling automobiles and the relaxed resort life type of ideal. I did a Bond movie layer, excuse me, a James Bond like villain-esque layer that was really cool in a really modern house. And this time I want to do a smaller interior and really explore that space. So this image, when we look at it stylistically, I like the colors that are going on. I like the high window. I really like what's going on with the shadow on the floor, that it's got a little bit of a yellow line there. You can see there's some interesting things that are happening with the shading around this chair. And even though this is a stylized illustration, it still is conforming to proper perspective. The perspective is still there. It's got, some interesting color choices that are happening. They're deciding where to put the details and where to leave the details out. And I really liked the details on the rug here as well. I thought these were really nice, and the way that they handled the shadows. So this was sort of my launching pad for what it is I wanted to do. And I said, heck, why not? Let's go for it. So from there, I began drawing. And I realized, we'll see the drawings here in just a sec, that I was going to need some more imagery. My first thought was, oh my goodness, after I get my sketches done, that I'm going to do line work on this project. And the more I started looking at reference images of this period's background art, the more I realized that, hey, line work is not the most important thing. Quick note on this image that I'm showing here, I don't particularly like this color scheme. I think that the sort of green yellow thing, the olive green that they have going on mixed with the blue and this red and these colors over here aren't the most striking colors in the entire world, but I do think it's interesting how they've used texture and broken down this chair into one side being shadowed, and the line work or the uneven line work is fascinating. And it's just a reminder to me for some rules that I can implement while I'm working on this project. So then I decided that I did not want to do the line work within this. But let me go through and talk about um, the sketches real quick. Move a little bit faster if I just do the color blocking on this and then go into the shading. But there's so many interesting things that they're doing with this style. It feels more simplistic. It's stylized. The shapes are exaggerated and a little funky, but the perspective is still there. The lighting is still there. The shading is still accurate to the lighting. And that's why we're doing this project third and not at the beginning, even though we're kind of taking all the lessons that we learned from the Jungle Project with distilling a whole bunch of information, visual information down into stylization, and then looking at the medieval times and looking at how to do buildings and interiors. And now we're really expanding upon that and those core lessons of lighting and perspective, and then bringing them into this project. So the way that this is going to work is I've got an establishing shot here. Your story can be anything that you want it to be, but creating a story helps so much to be able to drive this narrative. And we're looking at a 6-shot sequence for how a character or characters would move around a room. So this is going to be my establishing shot. I've got more here, but I want to bring this audience in slowly to this scene. So in the beginning, I imagine that there's going to be a fella sitting here at the desk, just typing away, or maybe he's standing and he walks on through the space a little bit, or we see him sort of pacing back and forth. From there, we're going to go over, the camera's going to cut, and we're going to get a close-up of the hands moving on the typewriter and the typewriter moving back and forth, and he's writing some kind of story, right? Now, from that moment, we're going to cut the camera again. We've already established that there's a coffee cup there. And from the coffee cup, we're going to move over into a shot of the full room with the character taking up this bottom right-hand side, sort of looks out and over, and we see them start to stand. Once they stand up, then they're going to cut the camera, and the character is going to move towards the window over here by taking a few steps. The next shot is the character looking out the window that we've already established within this space. Now, the final shot is going to be the character stepping out onto the balcony that we just looked at, and doing a stretch or doing some kind of action or motion out there. And that is going to be the shot sequence. It goes pretty fast, but we've got 3 different scenes and 3 different ways that we're exploring this one space. Now, on your home interiors, I've seen in the past where folks have created a bathroom shot, a bedroom shot, a hallway shot, a living room shot, a kitchen shot, and that's 4 or 5 different shots. They don't all have to be like that. Okay. You can take one small space and explore it from a variety of different angles, right? So I'm establishing here that there's a typewriter within the room. And the next shot is a close up of that typewriter. After that, we've got a medium shot of the desk that's not revealing the entire space. And there's a good balance here between really complicated shots that are going to take me a while to be able to render, such as this one right here, but it's going to turn out beautiful. I'm excited for it. And more close-up, pared down shots. And that's something that you're certainly able to do with this project. We don't need to just have like the Zillow photos of a home. Here's the bedroom, here's the bathroom, here's the kitchen shot. We're thinking cinematically about how the character is moving through the space, and thinking more in terms of this is an animated film or TV show, and how we're telling the story within this area instead of just trying to make it look like, Airbnb preview photos. Okay. So from here, I've got my various reference images, and what I'm going to end up using is this one. So here's another example of sort of that night. This is a modern example of that 1940s and 50s background art, but used in a really, really cool stylized way. Once again, we can see that the lighting is accurate here. We've got some atmospheric perspective as the trees start to fade off and get a little bit lighter as they move back towards the background. The bark has got a secondary level of detail, but there's still lighting within the scene that is accurate to the space. So we're stylizing the trees as well that are within this frozen pond or this lake, and they look really, really cool, right? And there's also texture that's being used within these shots. So it's my goal now to, since I'm going to jettison the background or the line art on this piece, the way that I decided for this is that I've got my bricks, I've got the strong horizontal lines, I've got shape objects, and I've got these windows back here that are naturally going to create line art within the piece itself. We've also got a lot of strong verticals. There's some cool details on the ceiling that are going to show up as well. We've got the picture frame. So this thing already has a lot of strong verticals and horizontals that I don't need to uh, strangle further with thin piping or line art around the outside of it. I think it's going to do its job on its own. So to begin this project, I'm going to start off with the way that I start off every project. And this is how I recommend that you guys do this as well, is starting from as far back as you possibly can within each shot. So when it comes to blocking this scene out, I'm going to start with the background of each shot, and I'm going to move my way through. I'm going to start developing all of these together at the same time so that as I start to build up my layers, I'm not wearing myself down with one shot after the next, and I'm just going to start working my way through. So over here in my layer structure, here's how I've got these built up. So I've got my reference images off to the side. Let me pull back on this whole thing so you can see it. This is much larger than 1920 by 1080. So all the way to the top. This is a 1920 by 1080 square. This is how I started my frame. So I created a 1920 by 1080 canvas at 150 DPI. And then from there, I start using my expansion tool, my crop tool, to pull out my canvas and make it larger. I did my sketches separately. You're welcome to do your sketches in here, but at this is still very much the sketch stage. I've talked a lot throughout this course about really thinking through all of those details early on within the scene so that you're not having to come up with things on the fly later on. Everything is really planned out here. What is going on inside of this mid-century modern piece of furniture? And while it opens up, we've got little books that are hanging out on the inside of there. Where are the house plants? What are the plants in the vase going to look like? Where are those established at? What does the patterning on the ceiling look like? And really going through and thinking through all the details. If you don't do this at this stage, right, you can see how I'm thinking about my picture frame and using the top of the picture, or sorry, the picture frame or the mirror frame here to mimic the same shapes that I'm using at the top of the windows that are going to be persistent throughout many of the shots. It's sort of an anchor and a placeholder. And this is the way to start building out these particular scenes. So yeah, I've got my color palette down here at the base, and blue is always a great spot to be able to begin with. I really like this blue and the greens and things that are going on here. I think I've got enough variety of colors within this scene. I've got some tans, I've got some off-whites, I've got a little bit of pink back here, which is really nice too. And I've got a couple different blues, and then there's some interesting colors that they're doing with the tree or on the aspen trees also. So I'm going to try to apply these colors within my shot. There's probably a few more that I'll end up needing, but this is my general color space that I'm going to be working from. So from there, I have gone through and I've done something else within my canvas. So these are all my shots. You can see how it's going to look if I did the line work. I'm not going to do the line work. Let's forget about that. But I'm going to turn down my visibility on my background. Let's go ahead and turn off the 1920 by 1080 one that we're using. Here's the line art that we're not going to use. And from there, I'm in a pretty good spot to start working. My sketches are down to like 29%. I've got my blue for my reference image, and I can go in and I can start blocking in as quickly as possible some of these shapes and some of these items. So you can see here I've got a whole bunch of different gray squares that I've created. We can merge all those together. And that is going to help me stay on point for where my perfect square is. Within my sketches, I'm okay at drawing straight lines, but they're not always going to be perfectly straight. And this is allowing me to be able to commit to the actual size and scale of the shot. They're not all perfectly 1920 by 1080. They have different aspect ratios, but they are larger than 1920 by 1080. And what this means is it gives me some room to be able to move the camera around within each one of the shots. So for the majority of them, I can move up and down and zoom backwards and forwards and do some interesting things with the camera movement for these different scenes. And yeah, so from there, I'm going to go in and on top of my gray image, we got a new fresh layer, and I'm just going to start working as quickly as I can. So while I'm filling these in, let's just make some choices, right? That's always the big thing. I'm just copying and pasting. So that's going to be where my background is at. Let's merge those two together. Let's go to the next scene. I don't have any blue that I'm using there, but on this one, I certainly do. So for this, I'm going to start building up my layers, and I know that I want my blue to arrive behind this. So I'm holding down Shift to be able to get a straight line. Now, with some of these, you'll notice within the reference images that we had, not straight lines are nice. They certainly work with the perspective. I'm using my pen tool. I'll be using the pen tool to be able to block a lot of this information in. There we go. But, stylizing the shapes of the objects is not a bad idea. It's pretty helpful and it works pretty good within your shots. Notice that I'm creating a new layer for each one of these. We want this guy to be good and square, and I'm being mindful of the the gray square around the outside of the image. All right, and fill it in. Cool. So let's go to the next one. And we really, so this one we're looking on in the other direction. This is going to go on the inside. There's probably still some, what you call it, reflection that's going to happen on the closed windows. So I'm going to go ahead and just cover these guys up. New layer, one, two, three. Hitting Control T on my keyboard and just bringing them up so that they're at the same height level. Okay. We've also got these guys up at the top that are going to have some reflection to them as well from the rest of the scene. And along the way, I'm going to start cleaning up some of my lines. So this is why these are still sketches and not my final drawings by any means. And it's starting to work. So there's my blue. And then from there, let's see here. I'm going to go on top of it. So let's just give each one of these sort of a color scheme. So we're going to say red, seafoam. I'm doing this completely arbitrarily just so that I can start to match these. So now I'm going to do another pass, and I've got my white window seals. So with the white window seals, you can see that they've got this tan that's coming within the background as things are being more affected by the light. It's getting a little bit more of the yellow within that tan. So I'm going to make my back wall, these window seals, a different color. So for this, this is one of those spaces where those brushes can really come in handy. So let's go into my brush. I've got my chip brush, which is pretty good, but the one that I want is the square brush. Let's find it. Hard square. There we go. So we got a hard square brush. And what this is going to do for me is allow me to be able to make some of those nice straight verticals without having the rounded top. Because after a while, you end up having to delete out the rounded top on this stuff, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to bring up my square to the size that I want it to be. I'm on a new fresh layer. And let's go straight down. This guy as well. Straight down. Holding down Shift and moving it straight across, holding down Shift, going straight across. Oops. Holding down Shift and going straight across. So you can see I'm getting a little bit messy there. That'll work for me. And holding down Shift, going straight across. That's going to be covered up by the door. And now we've got the separation in between each one of the door frames. Not exactly right, so let's move it over here. There we go. Okay, so that's feeling pretty good to be able to get that door totally shaded. I like what I'm seeing here. My opacity is up to 100%. My flow is up to 100%. And now we've got this shape on the inside that I can go ahead and define. Um, let's see here. So we've got, it's really sort of open in the middle. I haven't used my pen yet on my screen at all, my stylus. I've been doing all this with a mouse. So that's something that I stressed in the beginning a couple days ago was to make sure that you are rough paint, big hard, smooth ink. I think that'll work. So for the smooth ink, there we go. So we got a little circle. Let's go up over here. Feels really bumpy to me. I don't like that. I think I might need to get new batteries in my pen pretty soon. Okay, so that feels good here. There we are. And you notice that I'm working on just one of these. So the work smarter, not harder approach. I don't know if any of you guys are starting to maybe think ahead a little bit on what it is I might do next here, but I'm going to take this layer that I'm creating and I'm just going to copy and paste it over to my other window. And I'm going to see how much I can get away with all of these windows with just this base. So let's go in, let's duplicate the layer. Now, oops, not delete, duplicate, right click, duplicate the layer, hit enter, go on over, and there we go. So now we've got two windows that are the exact same size. There's no funny business going on with them. They look good to me, and they're working within my shot and within my scene. Let's see here. So for this one, I think I've got, yeah, that line on the side is pretty important. We're gonna bring these together just a little bit. I know I'm supposed to, not really supposed to do that. They should be equal sizes, but they're gonna be just a little bit off. That's okay. So from here, I've got my next shot. So I'm gonna paste in, oops, delete that. I like my navigator, Control C, Control Shift V, bring it up above into the red. And I've got my shot. Okay, so half of this is kind of hiding over on the side here. They're a little bit taller than what we had before, which is fine. So let me see if I can't break these guys up. I like the shape of the top of the window. I think that that's still pretty accurate. It's the middle bar that I'm having a little bit of trouble with here. So let's get the middle bar where it's supposed to go. Cool. That's all working well for me. And again, this is in perspective, right? So we're going to have to modify this image. And it's about working as fast as we can, right? And being accurate, oops, with what it is that we're creating. What is going to be the quickest way to get these things done? So I'm hitting Control T and up to the top. All right, that works for me. And so now I need to go in and I need to complete this window. So I'm going to go to my hard square again. All right, back to my soft ink. There we go, filling out the top. And not doing too much drawing. So we've got a little bit of an edge there. That's off center. Doesn't look quite as good as maybe it could. We need to move that whole thing on the inside over just a little bit. So just for the sake of making this look right, there we go. So now it's a little bit more balanced. So that's my baseline for the window. Is there anywhere else that these windows really appear? We've got them over on the side here. They're a big deal on the exterior as well. So I want to keep this is sort of a base one. So I'm going to duplicate this so that we're doing non-destructive editing, since I just made some more adjustments to it. And I'm going to turn off the visibility for now. So for this one, we know that we need two of them that are going to be edited. So we're going to go ahead and place this one here and here. And now we're going to go back to my first one. Let's go to Edit, Transform, and Distort. So with the Distort tool, I can save myself a lot of time. So let's bring this guy up over here and this one down. Okay, so now my windows are starting to work. Move them just down just a little bit more, and this one up just a little bit more. Okay, so we're losing a little bit of the top line, but that's okay. I think we're going to be all right. So let's go in, and now I'm going to take this next one, and I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and Distort. So let's bring it up to the top line within the shot. We got our corner pin in line with where the previous one started. And let's keep that line going. That feels pretty good to me. This isn't entirely straight. And we want to bring this down just a little bit further. So now I'm watching from this line to this. Are they connecting well? Do they feel like they're both in perspective in a successful way? Let's bring this up a little bit more. Yeah, we can see I didn't do exactly a straight line over on the side over there. So there's a little bit of tilt. One feels like it's maybe coming forward, and this one feels like it's tilting back. And now that I'm making this choice, let's go in and I don't know. We're gonna let it ride. I think it might cause a little bit of confusion later on down the line. And let's pull this one in just a little bit tighter. That feels pretty good to me. All right, so the perspective of those two lines is working. We've got curtains over the second one, I think. Nope. So that's the one closest. No, okay. So this one, we're starting the curtains. Yeah, this one has curtains next to it. This one just has a thin wall. So over on this side, we go in and account for the thin wall. There we go. That'll work well for me. Same thing. Can merge these two now. We've got the perspective business done. Make selection and exit. Okay, so those guys are starting to come into place, and you can see how this sort of starts to create a pattern. It starts to work. Next up, I've got this shot here. So this shot really isn't all that complicated. We've got the big blue square. I do have a church behind there, but right now I'm working through the, and I'm going to go back and do that church in a second. Hard square. Got a new fresh layer. And now we've got the edge of the frame. Oops, it's right here. Straight down. Okay, so you can see that my my hard square brush works well on verticals, and horizontals. But if anything starts to move away from that, even just a little bit, we start to get this stair-steppy thing that's going on. So I'm gonna back slowly away from it right there. And let's go back over into the smooth ink. Okay, smooth ink again. To the top, down. And I'm holding down the shift button. So I left click, hold down shift, left click again to be able to create these straight lines. And my fill tool, double fill, and that's working pretty good for me. Okay, so we got some big curtains on the outside, and you can see how this is starting to open up into this dark room that we're working through. We've also got these guys over here. I forgot to put the blue into this shot, so need to work on that a little bit more. But I want to show you how I can continue to use those elements that we've designed and created. So I'm going to hold on to this guy just one more time. Let's give him a new color, green, so I know that he's associated with this space. Huh. Oh, I see. So I've got something selected somewhere. There it is. All right. So for these guys, let's scale it all the way up. Oh, look at that. How about that? I love it when my scale for keeping the drawing the same. Thank you. Years of working in 2D animation and projects. Okay, so we're gonna keep that one the same, at least over on the right hand. I think I can make it a little bit bigger. I'm gonna cheat it just a little bit. Okay. And let's move all of this over. So I'm looking at the space between these two tan lines right now, because that's what people are gonna notice first. Let's go over here and we're going to scrunch you back. So you're going to be a little thinner. That window is going to be a little larger. We've got a nice straight line that's existing there. All three are completely even. And then we can see that the lines that we made here in the middle aren't quite adding up the way that I'd like for them to. So let's go in here. 1, 2, 3. We got all three of those. They're perfectly in line with each other. So I'm just using my region select tool, and that's where I want those lines to be at. It's just they are even. So that's actually more accurate, I think. That'll work well. Okay, let's leave it. And yeah, let's just clean up those blue lines that I created a moment ago so that they're hiding behind properly. Now that we know the spacing that I'm going to use, that's the only blue one that actually worked. Same layer as before, holding down shift to create multiple marquees to be able to fill. And there we go. We got two of those on the blue layer that are more accurate now. Let's not forget that we've got the door open within this shot. So I am going to still have the frame. But we want to cut out half the frame for the door opening. There we go. Let's go back to my blue layer and then cut out half this frame for that open door. As an animator, I would probably put the door on a separate layer or export it as a separate layer for the animators to show the character interacting with it and to make the character come from behind. And there's some other layering things when we go to export for actual production to keep in mind, but we're off to a pretty good start. And now I need to go back and do this window over here, but I think we're in a good space now that you guys are starting to get how I'm working through these and developing all the shots at once in a really quick way. to break down some of the overwhelmingness of this project. Again, please start at the very back of your scene, work your way forward. Um, I'm still working in different regions, so each one of these first base colors is sort of the start of a different section on my canvas, and that is beginning from the as far back as you possibly can. And I haven't created any folders over here because the folders. All right, here's the thing. When we create a folder, put this guy up at the top as kind of a extra file if I needed him later on for any kind of modifications or adjustments that come back from the studio. And I'm going to hold down if I created a group now, so all those green layers are in the same group. They're right here. If I right click on it, I have to go from 1940s, 60s one down to group one down to this layer, and that it's not quite where I expect it to be, and I don't want that. I always want it to be the second layer down. So I've got my overlapping layer, and then I just know, right, that layer 13 is where I want to be. Also, if you haven't done so, please make sure that you always turn off the auto select within the selection tool. This is a little click button right here, and that'll help you out an awful lot. Moving forward, I'm going to continue coloring this piece in, but for this next section of it, I'm going to do that just as a time-lapse video so you can watch the technique. This is what I'm doing. I'm using the selection tool, this guy. I'm using my pen tool quite a bit for any kind of large blocking. And then I'm moving between my chip brush. I'm not using my square brush on any diagonals because it's going to create a little bit of a stair-stepped line that isn't quite as sharp or as clean as I'd like for it to be. And yeah, I'm going to keep and then switching over to the smooth ink. I've got my canvas built out for how I want for where the shots are going to really live and sit at. And yeah, man, I'm just continuing to move forward through this. So let's turn off the one last thing, turn off that overhead sketch. And remember, I'm pulling all of these initial colors directly from this image down here. So they are subject to change. There's going to be more layering and stuff that I do over the top of them later on as I start to build this. But as always, the first step is just to go through and practice the color blocking within these scenes. Once we've got it color blocked, then we can start to create better stuff later on. You can see that I'm getting that marquee again. Ooh, how I hate that little marquee with the selection tool. I for the eyedropper. There we go. Got some other issues to clean up real quick. This guy has got a big gray line going through him. I don't want that to happen. Ooh, yeah. Now that we took it off, we can see how messy that smooth ink lines are. Those do not look all that clean. It's a bummer. But for now, we'll keep moving forward, but we'll be mindful of it with some of the other steps and layers that I've got within this piece moving forward. And yeah, man, this is how we kick these things off and get the party started. So stay tuned. We're moving into the time lapse next, and thanks for having a look.